Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back. Hope you've all managed to have a good feed upstairs and are ready for the second half of our day. And we've got some really great and inspiring presentations for you this afternoon, a lot of them from members of the community. And first up, I'm delighted to introduce what is becoming a bit of a signature session in our events, and that's Dave having a good old chin wag with somebody interesting from the industry. And today's no different. Dave's going to be speaking with Greg Jeffries of Visual Displays about something that's no doubt been a topic for all of us that we've had to deal with in the last couple of years. And that is space design and display standards for teaching and meeting spaces, and in particularly hybrid meeting rooms, and the work that Microsoft have been doing in their Teams rooms development. And I have to say, if any of you aren't connected with Greg on LinkedIn, I have to say, do so before the day's out, because Greg is one of the people who I have to stop and read every single post that he does in full, because it's always very inspiring and very thought-provoking. So, yeah, make sure you reach out to Greg. So, yeah, without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Dave and introduce Greg and the conversation.
Greg, hi.
Dave,
thanks
hi.
for joining us today at LTSMG.
Thank you for having me.
So it's May the 4th, isn't it? May the 4th be with you. Are you a Star Wars fan?
Not particularly.
No.
I do enjoy it, but yeah, I kind of lost the plot a bit there really now.
I think we all have. So that's the whole first page dealt with him. Okay. So I think you're quite a well-known industry figure, it's fair to say. You've been around a while. I don't think I was meant to put it like that, was I?
No, but
I didn't say I've been around the block. But really interested to know a little bit more about your career, because you've had a particularly interesting time, particularly including that you were the first non-US president of Infocom, which is now Avixa.
Yeah.
I understand your hobbies include photography, walking, running. Like most of us AV professionals, you regard yourself as a failed musician.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can relate to that.
Hands up, who else here counts themselves as a failed musician? Yeah. So yeah.
There you go, the whole room. Yeah.
Not very illustrious group, are we?
And you're currently you are the founder and co-owner of Visual Displays.
Yeah.
Tell us a bit more about your AV career path.
Well, my AV career path was absolutely random, and I think typical. Well, not typical in itself, but the fact that it was random was very typical. As I realised I was never going to earn enough to put a roof over my head with music, I got a job as a van driver with an exhibition company who also had a little AV business building rear projection cabinets for slide projectors, for those of you old enough to remember slide projectors. And it all kind of went from there. I've only ever had one proper job in my life, which was working for that company. And it was such a nightmare experience. So my reason for being in business and working myself has all been like a negative drive, really, because I just didn't want to be in that space again. And that's really how I got started. I was self-taught, doing optical and mechanical engineering from that. And then I made a particular specialism of rear projection, and took that as far as I could. And then as video projectors came in and we went through the various technologies. But what a very important early step for me was working as a consultant for DNP, a company I still work with. DNP have very kindly supported our sponsorship of the event, and Søren, senior manager somewhere here from DNP is here. But I did a consulting gig for them a long time ago, and that really helped me focus what I was doing. Really, everything came out of that. We developed a business making rear projection mirrors and rigs, distributing the screens, and we just learnt on the job. So it's all been different flavors of that. I think the most challenging thing that I've done technically has been, and to an extent still is doing immersive displays, designing domes and caves and so on. In fact, these days, to be honest, the really interesting stuff is in low-cost simulation, because and particularly in higher education, where you're looking to be able to create special experiences, but using low cost, consumer off the shelf components to be able to do it. And
can you give me some examples of those? What sort of the shelf stuff would be using in those low cost setups?
Well, it's really about making low cost projectors go further. That's the main thing. Particular thing that's happening at the moment is working with materials that are acoustically transparent, both front and rear projection. So that's quite interesting challenge. And just working with sort of modern fabrication techniques.
And that's very much part of your current business at Visual Displays.
It is. It's kind of patchy because we don't have a simulation. We used to have a separate simulation business that did that, and now it's much more about when people come to us. It's not something we promote actively. It's just something that we're known for. And again, it's about consultancy and design as much as doing it.
So you mentioned consultancy and design, and I know that recently you've been doing a lot of work with Microsoft, and you've had some visits down to the Hive.
No, I haven't visited the Hive yet. I've had a lot of virtual visits to the Hive. I've got one due, quite an important one, hopefully in the next month or so.
So for the uninitiated, what is the Hive? Okay,
so the Hive is part of Microsoft campus in Redmond, Seattle, up in the northwest in the States, and the Hive is their R&D center. It's built really like a TV studio where they've got completely enclosed space, and then they can build. It's like set work. They can build anything within that space with completely controlled lighting. What has been a really fascinating and inspiring thing is what's unique about Microsoft is that they've done this leadership thing of thinking about what the 3D space should be, what the experience should be, and they're using UX design principles, and so they can iterate quickly, and they're very proud of that. They do stuff with jigsaws and bits of cardboard and gaffer tape and put things together. But the things that I'm working on them in particular are about there's been they've in these spaces they're using projection, and a lot of old stages in Pro AV are going, oh God, not projection, so I'm working with them to use latest ALR materials and to use standards and to actually curate how people can deliver that, but also working with them about standards in general, because they have a thing. The Microsoft certification thing is it's a kind of a closed book if you're not kind of in the neat Yale sort of universe.
Yeah. So you touched on standards there. If I just pick up on that a sec. So you've just recently finished your tenure with Avixa, am I right, the chair of the standards committee?
Yeah, so SteerCo, as we call it, is the standards steering committee. It's had various names given to it. It was like we were management at one point and steering, and then back again, I can't remember. But standards was how I really got involved with Avixa in the first place. I did a module for a degree at what was UMIST, now University Management course, on projection, on projected displays, and that kind of got me off down that path. Yes, so I lost my thread there. What was the question?
Your interest and your passion for standards.
Yeah.
Your work with Avixa on that.
Yeah. So when I got that, kind of got me a bit of visibility within Infocom as we were then, and then I got invited to join their best practice group, and it was patiently explained to me that what you've got to understand, Greg, is that under no circumstances are we ever going to become a standards organization. And then 2 or 3 years later, it all went wrong, and we were an ANSI accredited standards development organization, and and I was involved with the initial steering committee, which was then led by a friend of mine, Scott Walker of Wakeguy Consulting, who's now sold out for a disgracefully large sum of money. It's just goes to show you what is possible. I've been involved with it ever since. I'd written what was effectively a standard or a best practice thing to do with projection, and we used that as a kind of a model or a base piece of work for one of the first standards we did, which was PISCA, the projected image system contrast ratio, which has now been superseded by image system contrast ratio. And I've been involved with writing and co-writing and leading standards ever since. I think the DISCAS standard is the one that sort of stuck the most. That was when I led that task group. Whenever you do a standard, there's always one or two superstars in the group who actually do all the heavy lifting and do all the smart stuff. And in DISCAS, we had one particularly smart guy called Dick Tolberg, who's now actually, I think, over with Biamp. I think he was with AVI-SBL at the time. And he did a lot of the maths and the work that we did on that. And that was very inspiring. But yeah, so it was originally a 2-year tenure as chair of the steering committee, but then you get it's called voluntold within AVIXA, and then that was extended for a year. We had a very tough time during the pandemic. AVIXA lost their revenue stream basically in one go, and then after a few months, the standards group that the staff we had like 5 members of staff was cut down to 1, and so really it was just basically about keeping the lights on. But we actually managed to do Rodrigo's here, he'll be able to confirm we actually managed to get a fair amount done during that time. So I'm done with that. February I was unceremoniously booted out. That was enough of that. I got a bit of my life back after that. And then, but we're still working on the UX design, user experience design for audiovisual, which is something that's particularly exciting for me and kind of ties in with everything else I'm doing at the moment.
So let's talk a bit about UX then, and kind of the physical environment.
Yeah.
Particularly kind of where the technology meets that. So
yeah.
I think we said we'd talk about Microsoft Teams rooms and the hybrid space.
Yeah.
You're also very into well-building and well-being standard.
Yeah.
Let's talk a bit about that area.
Okay, so where do we start with that?
We can talk about some challenges about displays. We mentioned that earlier, didn't we? We're talking about content sizes, and how the sort of various rabbit holes we've been forced down.
Yeah.
With platforms like Microsoft Teams, suddenly we need a screen the size of the entire wall to see just some basic presentation content.
Well, I mean, absolutely. So, it's not just Microsoft, but now, the future of hybrid working means you're going to have multiple content windows, lots going on at the same time. You need a much bigger piece of real estate on which to display that. Sometimes it'll be in 16:9, and sometimes it'll be in 21:9. But within standards, you have to. It's like the 3 R's. After X years, 5, you can get extensions. You've either got to retire, republish, or rewrite. And we've come to that point of time with DISCAS. But we're currently, a small group of us are currently rewriting it to actually include the kind of the gnarly bits that effectively Microsoft, or Microsoft being blamed for it anyway, have put upon us. But it also throws up an interesting interesting thing, because the thing about standards is that, and that is something that I'm working on a lot now, is that people tend to think of them that they've got to be like tablets of stone, and they can only be done in certain ways, and that's absolutely not how they should be used in my view. And what often happens is when you're working through standards, you'll find that the things clash, as you say. That if you've got a certain size room and you apply DISCAS, logically, you might have to have a display that starts below the ceiling and goes below the floor and goes above the ceiling. And what happens in practice is that you've got to establish a kind of a hierarchy of need, because usually or very often there are these compromises, and that's what you've got to do. But I mean, it's one of the many cliches I do. Our kids don't get marks for getting the answer right. They get the marks for getting the answer right, but showing the working.
Yeah.
And I think what standards do, or what one of the many things that standards do, is it helps you to work, gives you a structure, a process to work to, and even react against. But so long as you've done that kind of basic work. But you're asking about the well standard. The well standard version 2 is something that I find very exciting. I keep putting it off because I'm just very busy, but I'm due to sit the exam to become an accredited practitioner. I mean, I'm doing it in practice anyway, but I thought I might as well get the bloody letters,
certificate. Yeah.
Get the letters, get the certificate. I don't know if I get Green Shield stamps with it, but it's a very exciting a development, because what well has done in practice is to pull together all the sort of relevant environmental standards. In the UK, we've got SIBSI, or the Society of Light and Lighting. We've got a set of guidelines and standards around that. The US equivalent of that is IES. I mean, fortunately, those standards actually align really, really well. But what they do, and so all the other parts, acoustics, and the whole thing about the building, and making the building a sustainable and healthy place to be within. But what's really great about well is that they've done the work of pulling the good bits out of all the standards that are there. So in effect, it's a kind of repository of pretty much most of what we need to do. From an AV perspective, it's only half the story. But the thing I particularly love about it is that there are hooks where you can engage the AVIXA standards with it. So, for example, with ISCAR, the Image System Contrast Ratio standard, which is now the updated version of the standard, so that all display types can be assessed on a level playing field. It's all the same thing. The thing about contrast is that it's a relative. It doesn't say how black the blacks have to be, how white the whites have to be, but using
measurement of difference.
It's a measurement of difference. It's not a measurement of an actual level or a quantity. And what you can do with well is using metrics such as task luminance ratio, which is the guidelines that you use to stop asthenopia, eye strain, of keeping all of the luminances within a space within a certain range. Then that gives you the hook that you can then loop back to ISCAR with. So that's the kind of thing that really kind of excites me, and that's something I'm developing in my practice.
I think I feel like we could almost go down the rabbit hole here of talking about how early we can get into those new build projects, and we can try and influence design.
Yeah.
From the AV perspective.
Well, I mean, I've had all sorts of conversations like that. Marcus and I were sitting chewing the fat earlier on about his exciting new project, which we're going to hear about in a while. The fundamental problem is, I'm going to chuck this at architects and generalize wildly in my usual way, but it's very difficult for architects to really understand that what they have to deliver now are technology-enabled spaces. That's the actual outcome that when the building gets handed over to the users needs to be. Whereas in reality, what happens is you get given a space to which you then have to put AV in, and then usually spend a bit of money undoing some of the crap that's there to start with. And so that's really kind of like exemplifies where I'm at the moment, because although what I do is very much, of course, about technology and how it's using, it's the preconditions of that, of seeing how the room needs to be configured, what kind of lighting scheme, what kind of lighting standards have to apply, and the room finishes and acoustics and all of those things, so that you get the idea being you work to make the space optimized for the technology to go in it, and not to use the technology to kind of fight against it and
Or fix the space.
Turn the DSP up to 11 to try and get rid of the all of the horrible decay time and so on. But it's where I think that the interest is. I think the trouble within AV, he said again, generalizing horribly, is that we're all technologists, we're all technophiles, and we'd all like to believe that whatever the problem in a room was, the answer is, well, what bit of kit are we going to buy to wave the magic wand over it? And the thing about UX, the thing about UX design, or the way that I express it, is that what the objective is to come up with, to be able to describe in hard measurable metrics what a good user experience is, and reverse engineer from that point. And so standards have nothing to do with, for example, saying we've got to use this piece of kit or that piece of kit. It's a technology or a manufacturer agnostic process that you go through to get to that point where that choice is made.
So Matt mentioned your LinkedIn posts. You're wondering what I'm going to pick on there, aren't you?
Yeah. You're picking on me.
So that you wrote one this morning about students in particular not wanting hybrid anymore and looking for that in-person experience.
Yeah.
And I think that's true across the board. We're fed up with all these hybrid meetings where having to happen.
Yeah.
So what you were talking about there about UX and technology, it seems like we're very much looking now to enhance the in-person experience a lot more, and get much better value, if I can use that term, out of the spaces. Can we do that with technology?
Yes, we can do it. I think there are a couple of parts to that, because I think that one of the things I always say to a client when we start a project, if you give me a really good brief, I can give you a really good outcome. But it's actually getting to that point where you can describe that brief. Because of the pandemic and because of everything that's going on, particularly with Teams and so on, I have been so focused on hybrid for obvious reasons, and that's very much an ongoing thing. But just from a personal perspective, that it really came home to roost, where my oldest stepdaughter is going to go up to uni at the end of the summer. And that was one absolute non-negotiable for her, is that she would not even entertain the thought of going to uni where it wasn't all 100% in person, because the kids have either had that experience or know people have had that experience. But what I think that does is it throws it back upon us to do these spaces properly,
really
to do them better. I think that's it's kind of, we've come back into the room and we're kind of looking around them in with a different way, and I think with a bit more sense of inquisitiveness and about what it is that we need to do. So I think it just makes it's like a back to basics thing. It's about going back to basics about good room design and what the principles are. None of it's rocket science. But very often, and when I'm consulting, it's not because I kind of particularly know more than anybody else. But the trouble is, everybody's got a bloody day job, and they're all very busy, and it's very hard to, the rooms are gnarly problems. You've got to break them down into the individual pieces. So it's just having that kind of focus and discipline and structures the way to work through it.
I think with some of that problem solving, I think community can be an area where it can really feed into that. And that, you could say this is an LTSMG plug.
Well,
but there's a lot, I think, to get out of that, kind of the shared experiences.
Absolutely, 100%. And by the way, I just want to say a massive congratulations to you and the rest of the team for what you've done here, because I know what it's been to get to this point. But I think what the LTSMG does is absolutely fantastic. But I think
we'll just wrap it up there, shall we?
Yeah. Okay. And but I think the thing is that there is this is why I love higher ed anyway, because everybody's in this community. But I do feel though that there are those are one of the future possibilities about how we can expand that and how we can have little forums to exchange problems and solutions. So I think you know, I think that those are that this is the kind of campfire that you guys provide so well. But definitely, those are the sorts of things that that I'd be interested in the future.
Right. I think we're out of time. We said that half an hour would go quick, didn't we?
Yeah.
I don't think we've got time for questions, unfortunately. But you can find Greg on his stand, visual displays, just near.
It's in that corner there.
Just in the corner there. Greg, thank you so much for your time. Really interesting chatting to you as always.
Thank you, Dave. I was really honoured that you asked me to do it, and so thank you very much.
Not at all. Yeah. Thanks very much. Cheers.
Lovely. Thanks, Greg. Thanks, Dave. That was really, really interesting. So, sticking on the theme of standards, next up, and in our first member presentation of the afternoon, I'm delighted to introduce Rodrigo Sanchez-Pisani from King's College London. I'm going to read from this, which is a little bit of background to Rodrigo. So Rodrigo started his AV life in Venezuela, working in broadcast, studio, and live sound production. After moving to the UK in 2005, he started as an AV tech at KCL and now leads the AV solutions team at that institution. He's been part of the AVIXA Standards Committee, as Greg mentioned, has an interest in acoustics with a specialist interest in speech intelligibility. And this sounds fascinating. I need to speak to you a bit more about this. And he's currently working on a PhD investigating the possible mechanisms to automatically classify the audio quality of lecture capture recordings. And as you may have seen on the LTSMG mailing list, Rodrigo's been doing a lot of work in developing AV standards at KCL and the estate there in order to realise their teaching, learning and research objectives. And Rodrigo is going to share with us some of the work that he's been doing, his insights, experiences and approach that he's taken to developing those. So welcome, Rodrigo.
Thank you. Sorry, let me get this on. And, oh man, glasses. So that, yeah, okay, fine. Okay, thank you for having me. I'm from King's, as Matt said. I'm from the AV Solutions Technical Lead. We've been doing a lot of work in AV standards, and this is more to talk to you guys so you see what we've done over the years, and also to ask for a bit of help. The plan, well, I'll tell you that at the end. So why the standards? Well, I think that's fairly straightforward. Student experience, lower cost. We are not doing that so great on the lower cost, but that's the intention. So we've been through this for many years. I've been working with Mick for many years. We started that journey, I think, in 2012. Some of the first iterations of the standards were terrible. Some were not so terrible. Some were simply non-existent. So we sat together and we came with 6 points, and we said, well, standards need to be flexible agnostics. They need to be free from ambiguities. And one thing that is very personal to me is that you can actually reference the work that other people have done. So normally happen with a lot of standards that we get from consultants, etc., that there's no reference to the work that other people have done. For example, while working with Greg, there's a lot of effort into the standards from AVIXA and other institutions. So that work needs to be recognized. And for me, it's been quite important that that actually is included, and also needs to be professional and structured. We start working with different departments. So we start working with the legal team. And in our view, we wanted to have the standard that is easy for everyone. So we work with the legal team to have like a tender chapter that you can just grab and put into tender if you need. We work with the architects to start having more of a holistic view of the room. In terms of, well, what is the acoustics, the lighting, the furniture, the color materials, etc., of the room. And yeah, well, we work with the different clients like portfolio and states and facilities for that. And then, well, Mick has changed roles recently, but as a Navy manager from the AV services point of view and solutions, we then came together and start designing things like schematics, the program for Crescent joints, the program for Crescent, how the bomb, and even the cabling numbering. We have used AVIXA a lot, actually, in all of this. And this is one of the new things that we are bringing. So we the first iteration happened in 2021, which was version 10. And now we are moving into version 11. And one of the things that we want to bring in is all the AV over IP. And now we're working with our network colleagues to actually to get that done and finalized. And finally, well, in the document, we put like things like list of spares. We will make sure that is well referenced. And we also included our witness testing documentation. One of the things, as Greg was saying, is that it's important that the standard is not a document, it's not a dead document, it's not something that you just get it done. So we tend to incorporate things like ISE. We move the rotation and the renewal of the standards to after ISE. So we go see new technologies or events like this, and then we fit that into the standards. And that very much is our journey to get there. I tried this in my room yesterday, and that didn't work quite well. So I made offline copies of them. So one of the things about the standards was, well, we were talking about the importance of actually getting the data. So one of the things that we did is, don't worry, I'm not going to go through the whole Excel spreadsheet. It's just to give you an idea of what it is. So we asked a series of teams in King's, and we went, okay, please go around the rooms, evaluate the rooms, look at everything from I don't think that you can kind of read it, but it's basically audio quality, speech intelligibility or speech quality, video quality, not quite the same as speech quality and intelligibility, but anyway, I'm not going to get into that. Video quality, user experience, etc. And we use a MOS scale to actually to rank that 1 to 5, and then we use some logistic functions to actually to create that into an algorithm that will give us some numbers, right, and some weighting. That then we use into this. Hopefully it will work. Yeah, okay, that's amazing. It's up and running, and that we put into a Power BI dashboard. And this is basically available for everyone in the university. So what that will give you is you can see the data of the different rooms, how good or how bad they are, subjectively speaking, and we'll give you a list of rooms. This was a bit of a nightmare because different people name different rooms in different ways. So that was fun. But once you have that, then that we can do some analysis on the data, and hopefully, yeah. So what that gives you is, for example, on the wide axis, we have the cost per seat. Then you have on the horizontal axis, you have the user rating, and we divided that in the cost per room. So we have four buckets of rooms, and we divided that in the cost per seat. So if you want to, for example, look at a room that is, say, all the rooms that have a user rating lower than 3, and you want to see where your money goes. So obviously you have these red dots are likely to be lecture theatres because they tend to be more expensive. But obviously the cost per seat is lower because they seat more people. So obviously that will give you a bit of a bang for your money, and it gives you an overall holistic overview. So that user rating includes all the weighting that we were looking into that. So we're looking at AV not just from the equipment side of things, but as a room. So we are looking at acoustics and all of that. And then obviously this end up in the standard. This is a disclaimer. There's no sexy way to talk about a PDF document, right? So apologies for that. This is just what it is. I'll show you what the new version is going to look. I have to say that other than those people on that list, even for Mick, this is the first time that you're seeing this document. It's obviously a draft. It's quite clear there, and is the whole idea was to present this in a digestible and easy way. Obviously, the standard is 242 pages. I'm not going to read it all, but I'm just going to show you some of the bits. Obviously, we included things like definitions, the acronyms. We separated the standards, and we created like an audience of which part of the standard is significant to. That went not right. So that's the scope, for example. So in the scope, you can see which part of the document are applicable for different areas. So different, for example, for King's venues, rooms that are really large rooms and mainly used for events, we'd recommend not to use Part 5 because that will give you a list of equipment that is not really suitable for those designs. And we basically tell you the standard. One of the things that we wanted to have was some flexibility. So we created a mind map of a standard that will tell you, well, okay, what's your room? Well, my room is a small room or a large room. Which part of the standard actually applies to that bit of the document? And you start basically following that with some basic user requirements for the common rooms. And one of the things that we also incorporated was to try to sharpen the mind of the people that actually provides the money. So we created a matrix and basically with the user requirements. And what that is that, for example, we have several schools at the top. You get like NMES, which is mathematical sciences and film studies, informatics, and the basic room. And essentially, the more tick boxes that you get, the more expensive the room it is. So obviously, if you want to use a room that is only for math, it's going to be cheaper than a room that is going to be used for math, film studies, informatics, and just have the basic bits and pieces. And obviously, we include things like environmental requirements and the list of equipment overall that needs to go in there. And that goes into, obviously, the design process and all the series of contractual information. I'm not going to go into this, but that's the tender information, how the equipment actually gets approved. We actually added some of the requirements for consultants because it's not necessarily needs to be by us that we do the consultancy. It could be external consultants. So what happens when you get an external consultant? What's the process? If you have an acoustician, what needs to be the qualifications of that person? And then we take some of we also allow there to be able to veto some companies because problems that we had in the past. And then we go into general specifications of the rooms, where we start talking about acoustics. Before that, one thing that we actually included that we thought was quite useful was that we also included the way that we communicate. So if you're a client, you need to talk with AV Solutions or the consultant, and then that sort of pendulum works in there in way to communication. So that allows people to know who to talk and who to describe things. Obviously, we have things like acoustics, audio, assisted learning, and other bits and pieces. The network design, we included a section about sustainability, the cable labeling of the different areas, and acceptance testing, spare maintenance, etc. Some type of rooms. So one of the things that we didn't want to do was to talk and provide designs of rooms. So, but there are certain rooms that don't change much. So, for example, meeting rooms, certain interactive type rooms, high flex rooms, etc., etc. So for those ones, we actually provide full design. So for example, for digital signage, we already have the screen sizes. We don't say, well, in this case, we actually say the brand. That's for different reasons and commercial reasons, but obviously we have the screen sizes and the whole design and basically the heights where they need to be mounted for our purposes. Teams meeting rooms, well, obviously that changed because they were based around Crestron and the Teams meetings room from Crestron, and those are not going to happen anytime soon. So that's changing. Sorry. And finally, we included some appendices when we actually talk a bit about the maths behind it, what is the logic behind all of that. One of the things that that's why I'm stopping here. One of the things that we included in the room was we're using something called the FAST STI, which is a very easy formula to calculate. It's essentially 2 constant, and then you multiply that by the rotation time of the room. The reason being is that it so happens that for timetabling, a room that seats 50 people is a large room. A room that seats 48 is a medium-sized room. But a room that seats 48 people might have a 3-4 meter void or space at the front. So obviously the volume of the room will be large, but it only seats 48 people. From the timetable perspective, it's a small room, medium-sized room, doesn't seat enough people. But from the physical point of view, from the display point of view, the furthest viewer is actually further along because you have this distance, and also the reverberation is actually higher. So that way we allow for people to determine the size of a room. Obviously, everywhere in the standards, we also say, well, if you have the experience and you know the room, you can discard that. So that's how we got away with the flexibility side of things. As you were saying, Greg, I mean, one of the main things with the standards is that it needs to be a reference. It can be a situation of computer says no. It needs to give you that guidance that is good enough so you can get the room done and all the rooms have the same basis, but sometimes common sense needs to prevail. So obviously if you have a room and the screen actually doesn't fit in the room, well, you can't actually fit the screen in the room. It's as simple as that. And I think that's it. I mean, there are a few other bits and pieces that you can look into all of that. But one of the changes to the standard, and this is that's the witness testing example. Sorry, the formatting just went a bit higher whilst I compiled that. One of the differences with this is that we have written the whole document in LaTeX. I know that's because we are a bunch of geeks, but the other reason is because it makes it a little bit easier to manipulate. So one of the reasons, and this is where I'm actually saying, if you want to help, this should be in a GitHub repository by the end of this month. And part of this talk is to invite you all to actually join that GitHub repository and start collaborating into this standard. So you can jump in, grab it. That includes the standards, includes designs, include CAD drawings, include blocks, and everything that you fancy in there. And I think that's it. I mean, that's what the standards I'm talking about, and this is our journey. I don't think I have much more than that. So. Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Just going to give everyone about 3 seconds just to pick your jaws up off the floor. Absolutely incredible work. Is there any questions for Rodrigo? Yes. All good?
So I just talk into this thing.
That's it?
I have to apologize with the rest of the audience because I make him go back to the Excel sheet.
Yeah. Do you want me to?
If I understood this correctly, you had a.
Yeah.
Like I'm curious how this rating. How do you came to this range of rating? Like how did you come to set up what means audio quality 5?
Right.
For instance.
I was hoping that someone will ask that question, but there thanks. So essentially, we took the idea from this. There's in audio. There are two main scales that are used very commonly. One is MOS, which is the mean opinion scores for audio quality, and they use that in Microsoft Teams and other. Is very common in telephony. And the other one is MOSRA. MOSRA is 0 to 100, and MOS is 1 to 5, 0 to 5. So what we came with the idea is that we have, okay, it's completely subjective. We sort of came with a hybrid sort of approach. We normally, when you do opinion scores, you need a really big population sample, right? So that way you can do statistical analysis with that, and then you get with that. But you need a big number of participants, and in that case, you are naive. When you use MOSRA, on the other hand, you can use trained participants. So in our case, what we did is that we approached the AV team. We approached AV team that we knew that they had different interests. So for example, people that actually is very keen in audio, we tend to pair them in groups of 3 or 4, and then we calculate stuff like standard deviation and do a bit of jiggery-pokery to the different numbers. And then in the past, in 2016, we did an extended study with some students as well. So we already knew from that analysis what students actually like the most. So for example, all day is more important to them. Based on that, that gave us the weighting. So obviously the 1 to 5 scale comes from the mean opinion score idea, and is essentially an average of experts. So basically, if I invite you guys here, all of you are experts in your field, that'll be a very easy task because, well, we have a lot of us in here. But in this case, we didn't have the luxury, we didn't have the numbers, so we had to go with 3 or 4 people. So the numbers, it could be a bit, there could be a bit of bias, and we are conscious of that. So one of the things that we want to do now, and this is one of the things that we're changing at the moment, is that we, for example, for speech quality, we are using actual models and using objective metrics. So for example, rather than using subjective evaluation for like MOS, we're using a speech transmission index for intelligibility and video quality, etc. Well, video quality is a bit different, but you can use Mosher with that as well. And then the student experience and all of that, yeah, that will have to be subjective because there's no other way to do it. But does that kind of answer the question, or do you want me? Yeah. I mean, if you want to dig into the whole math behind it, give me a shout and we can go through all the formulas. And I probably got it wrong, but if not, we'll run through it.
Fantastic. Unfortunately, I think we're going to have to cut it there because we haven't, unfortunately, run out of time for any more questions. But obviously, I think you're happy to take questions via email.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, so thank you. Let's really go. Fantastic. Okay, finally, before we break for coffee, I'm really excited to introduce Ben Payne from the Royal College of Physicians. And Ben's going to talk to us about the AV solution at the Spine building, which is a new building at the institution up in Liverpool. Ben tells me the building's very busy at the moment for planning and production meetings for Eurovision, but he has assured me that he's not going to be presenting in Lycra. So yeah, welcome, Ben.
Wow, that was 2 highbrow presentations. I'm not quite sure how I follow those with what we talk about at the Spine. I'll give you a little bit of context first, because I don't know how much you know about us as an organisation. There's a reason why the presentation is called Everything Everywhere, which will become clear in a little while. So we are a 505-year-old membership organisation. Originally started with the support of King Henry VIII. We have 40,000 members worldwide. To become a member of the Royal College of Physicians, you have to pass an exam. We provide postgraduate training for physicians working as registrars across the world, usually in things to do with leadership and management. We are a policy organisation, so we work very closely with the government on areas of public health and work around the NHS. We are a research body, so we do a lot of work on standards in healthcare. We do a lot of QI work, looking after how hospitals develop their services. We have small museum status, and we are also a commercial venue. In 2017, the president of the college at the time put forward her vision to make the college less London-centric and to find a partner somewhere in the north to build a second home for the Royal College of Physicians. And this was the basic mission statement towards the end. This was about finding a heart for medical and scientific research and a presence in the north to help with policy initiatives, particularly around reducing health inequality. It's our second home. Our first home is in London. It's in Regent's Park, in St Andrew's Place. This is a Grade 1 listed building, built in 1964. It has been our ceremonial home. It has been our education space. It has been our commercial event space, our office and meeting space, and our museum for the last 50 plus years. And when we were asked to start looking at a new building in Liverpool, we knew that we had to try and fit all these different functions into a relatively limited space. So we spent a lot of time talking to the users, the heads of all the departments. We spoke to our education team, our policy team, our events team, etc. And we started to get quite a clear scope of expectations for all the spaces that we had available. One of the strengths, I think, of the project was that we were in at the ground floor. The building is not the college's building. The building was built for us by Liverpool City Council with a view to us being, if you like, a kind of a super tenant. So even during the original Cat A meetings, there was a presence from the Royal College of Physicians whilst we were still talking about where the concrete was going to be, the dimensions of the building, etc., etc. And we started talking about the AV and the IT as a single proposition at the point that the Cat A discussion started. I think Greg was saying earlier on, particularly when you're looking at things like WELL and BREEAM, it's very good to have that relationship with the architect. And the college was very keen that the building would get its WELL platinum status, which it's got. And as that was a target at the very start, the discussions with the architects helped us with the way that we thought about the AV and the IT design of the building. So, everything everywhere. This was basically my fault. We wanted to design a suite of multi-use spaces for the 6 floors out of the 13 floors that the college would be using. So the middle floors of the building still belong to LCC, and LCC are renting those out to other companies that need to use them. The Royal College of Physicians has ownership over the ground floor, the first floor, the second floor, and then the 10th, 11th, 12th, and 13th floors of the building. We knew we wanted it to be a multifaceted space. We wanted to make sure that any combination of rooms could be used for pretty much any function. We wanted to make sure, as I said, any audio input to go to any audio output, any video input to any video output, anywhere across the building. And we wanted it to be able to be managed at the technician level. One of the things I love about AV is that it's such a great community. And all the organizations, all the publications on this particular slide have contributed in some way or another to how I've thought about this project. Everybody being here already knows this, but if you're going to do a project, anything like this, the best thing to do is to ask the people in these audiences and the people around. You get so many great ideas, and I couldn't thank all the people that have one way or another contributed to what we actually ended up doing in Liverpool. We spoke a lot about partnerships at the start, and we took advice from everybody that we could. We spoke about integrators, we talked about consultants, we asked everybody we could for their opinion. We went through a very robust process. We spoke to some really, really brilliant companies all the way through, and we ended up working with Recursive as our design consultants, and Pure AV were our integrators on the project. We made a few conditions for the project, which LCC were a bit reluctant with, and I'm sure they make sense to you, but we insisted that the consultants and the integrators were independent of the rest of the construction team. At the start, there was quite a push that the AV would be a sub of the M&E consultants and the fit-out contractors, and we insisted that both Recursive and Pure were directly employed by the college, which led to some interesting moments of tension, but it also meant that we were able to kind of make sure that the AV and the IT work was prioritized when in other cases it may not have been so. And we also made these appointments very early in the process. So again, before any concrete was poured, we already knew who our design consultants would be, and our design consultants were talking to the architects from early on, and Pure AV were recruited and were already working with us as soon as the first concrete was poured. And it's been a really, really strong partnership between the Royal College of Physicians and the companies that we brought in, and we're very grateful to both of them. Technology. So this is not an exhaustive list of the manufacturers and the equipment that we use at the Spine, but again, through things like ISE and what have you, we spoke to lots of companies from 2016, 2017 to learn what was on their roadmaps, what their possibilities were. And again, we'd like to thank all these companies for their help in what we did. So that's a little bit of blurb from one of our entries. What we did at the Spine was to design the IT and the AV as a single proposition. It allowed us to put all the AV equipment on a single network. It allowed us to have the flexibility to link everything in the way that we wanted it to. The whole thing is basically held together using the QSys platform. So we've got 6 QSys cores across our 6 floors. We use it for control. We used it for the video. We used it for the audio. We learned a lot about QSys, and I think QSys learned quite a lot about their product as well. There are 837 networked audio devices connected to QSys and our network on this project. Okay, so May the 4th, I couldn't help. That's my one little bit. That's just for Adam. Control. You must learn control. Thank you very much. The best thing about the project, from my point of view, is actually the control. It's actually the GUIs that were designed. We have a system which was programmed in such a way that the AV technicians who work at the Spine can pull any feed from anywhere else in the building into any room that they need to when they're working, which gives us kind of an almost infinite range of options in terms of which rooms can be linked, which rooms we can put together for particular things. In the larger space on the top floor, we can split it so it can either be a live event space where Dante basically feeds everything through a live mixing desk and through live presentation equipment, or we can split it the other way and it just becomes an autonomous beast across 4 different sites. And our technicians are particularly keen that the whole thing can be done using a mobile phone app as well. So the GUI has been really, really useful for us. It just gives us the ability to kind of change everything on the fly, which, again, we're really lucky to have. So a quick dive through the spaces. The top 2 floors act as our commercial event space, a space called Spaces at the Spine. It can either be a single space for up to 300 delegates. The conference space can be split into either 2 or 4 separate rooms. There are 4 96-inch screens. As I said, the audio systems can either be automatic or controlled through a live desk, depending on the types of events that we're running, which allow it to be both meeting rooms, user-driven, or kind of high production events that we do. We've got front and rear cameras, and we have the ability to stream from not only this room, but anywhere else straight out to any of the different platforms that we would stream to. We have the Wolfson Virtual Lecture Theatre. So this was built as a design learning facility, uses the MashMe software. It's a 6x3 in terms of kind of video screens. We can have up to 48 remote participants, front and rear cameras, designed for virtual and hybrid learning. But we placed it in a place in the building, which is also where our reception area is. And it has a rear partition wall. So when we're not using it for distance learning, we can still use it as an extra kind of space for delegates to kind of view content, digital signage, branding, what have you. It's designed to be either a virtual space or, as you can see from this picture, kind of a hybrid space where you can have students in the room and students online, and a lecturer kind of dealing with both at the same time. We have a whole floor, so our 11th floor is our exams simulation suite. So it looks like a hospital as you walk into it. It's 24 separate consultation rooms, split into 2 groups of 12. Each room has 2-way audio, a timer system, video relay and recording facilities. We use it for RCP exams, so we do the OSCEs and the PACEs there. Again, it's a commercially rentable space, so if anybody needs a simulation suite, come and see me afterwards. There is a nurses station for each of the 2 groups of 12, and from the nurses station, examiners have the ability to kind of view what's going on, see the consultations. We can also relay this to some of our larger spaces, so post-event, examiners can sit and actually discuss all the content, everything that's been recorded. We have Wolfson, Harvard Lecture Theatre, so this is quite a standard Harvard-style lecture space. It's probably the only space that we have which is kind of really single use. I mean, all the other spaces can be used for more than one thing, but obviously the fixed furniture in here kind of changes that. Again, very typical, I imagine, to a lot of what you guys are used to. So control podium, providing access to all the inputs, relay screens for students and presenters, streaming capability. Again, you can pull video, audio feeds from pretty much anywhere else in the building if you need to. Going back to the thing that Greg said at the start about Well and Bream, the college was committed to making this as healthy a building as possible. And from an AV perspective, a lot of the people that have been to the building have commented that actually the AV is very inobtrusive. A lot of the spaces have very complex AV in it, but it's been designed in such a way that it doesn't overpower, it doesn't make you kind of conscious that it's there. And that was kind of part of our attempt to kind of fit in with that whole ethos around. And again, I think the companies that we work with were really, really good in terms of making sure they understood the Well and the Bream standards as part of the design. So yeah, again, that's the virtual wall just under there, but as you can see there, we're using it as kind of a hospitality space instead. We're not finished with all these things. There's always bits more to do. We have a staircase called Steps, which is conceived to be an informal meeting and event space. The college is looking to invest in this space in the next couple of years. We put all the infrastructure in place. And this will be the next part of the project for us. And that's it. Thanks.
Right. Okay. Has anybody got any quick questions for Ben on that? Cool. There we go. Right, here we go. Test this. Oh, yes. Yes. Nearly took out the ceiling tile.
I've been lucky enough to visit, and it is an incredible space. Just going back to what you said at the start, you said obviously that you are a member organisation, educational organisation, training body, research space, small museum, commercial venue.
Yeah.
How the hell do you go about meeting all those aims and wants? Is that through the architecture? Is that through furniture? Is that through the control that you mentioned? Is it kind of all those working together, or is it something else?
I mean, I've worked at the college for 11 years, so I've got quite a clear sense of kind of how the different departments want to operate. It informs the audio-visual design. I mean, it's very clear that we want the AV to work in as many different ways as possible. So, you know, the way we put in ceiling microphones, the way where we put the cameras, where we put the screens. The rooms have to work with no furniture in them. So we almost start from the basis of every space is a white box. And every day that space begins as a white box, and people need to move furniture in or staging in or whatever it may be. How quickly can the AV in that room support whatever that requirement is, whether it's a boardroom meeting, whether it's a theatre style thing, whether it's cabaret. So yeah, I mean, it informed the audio-visual design because we needed to make sure that the things there were good at what they did specifically, but had a general kind of landing pad of things that they could do. If that makes sense.
Lovely. And just to say, Paul is joining us from Innovate today, and he's kindly here with us and always on the lookout, I think, Paul, for interesting case studies and projects. So,
If anyone's got any case studies, come and grab me afterwards. I'm looking for, and I'll write them all. You don't have to do anything. I'll do it all for you. Just come and grab me.
Brilliant. Lovely. One more question down here before we go for the break.
Looks like you've done an amazing job. How did you deal with the budget? Were you given a budget? Did you have to apply for? Did you have everything you needed to get all of the wonderful things that you've put into the building done?
So we didn't get everything that we asked for. We had a list of kind of priorities, and we said to kind of the project team at the start, these are our essentials. These are the things that we can bring in later. And because we did it as kind of a combined AV IT thing, it made it a lot easier for us to find a single budget to kind of support both. Endpoint equipment's quite ephemeral. You know, what we really focused on was how much wiring we could get in there, how much network infrastructure we could get in there, making sure that the switches were capable of expansion, making sure that there was enough give in the QSys system for kind of future development, because, you know, we've got a 25-year commitment at least to this building, and we know that we'll want to expand it. We'll know we'll want to kind of change it as the organization changes its ways of working. So yeah, I mean, that's the way that we worked it. You know, the college was willing to invest. We had to put in a business case, but as I said, because so many of the spaces had multiple uses, we were able to kind of argue we would be increasing the opportunities for occupancy in spaces which might not otherwise if they were more kind of single use in their design.
Lovely. Let's put our hands together to Ben for a great presentation. Thank you, Ben. Lovely. So now we're going to break for a quick coffee break. We'll say 15 minutes, and if we can be back in here for 3:05, and we'll continue with some more presentations. Thank you.
Afternoon and welcome back. I reckon this is a good opportunity for me to stare at the camera and say hello to our viewers who are watching the live stream. I'm not sure why the tech crew suddenly look all panicked. They forgot to press go live. I'm only joking. So hi to those of you who are watching us live online on YouTube today. Great for you to be with us. There's another shout out I need to do to one of our colleagues from the University of Limerick. Carl Christie, I understand it's your birthday today. So that wasn't going to go unnoticed. So happy birthday. Final introduction to do at this point is to our next presenter, Ben Barnard. Ben is Regional Manager for Avixa. Have I got that right? Oh, finally. It's taken me all these years. Ben's going to give us an update on Avixa's activities, a bit of a recap on their work at ISE and a look into their future projects. So Ben, over to you.
Thank you. Yeah, so those of you who don't know me, my name is Ben. I'm from Avixa, manager of the regional manager for the UK and Ireland. Thank you to Dave and the team for having me here. I used to reel off their names, but now there's so many of them. I just sort of like say the team, sort of multiplying. Yeah, and so I'm just here to give you an update on what Avixa have been up to since we last saw each other in December. So I guess the big news is the ISE show, which we held in Barcelona in February. Many of you will know that obviously during the pandemic, as Greg Jeffries alluded to earlier in his conversation with Dave, we completely lost our revenue stream from those shows. It was a difficult time. We managed to obviously squeeze the one in sort of February 2020, but since then it was really off the cards. And coincidentally as well, an unfortunate coincidence was that the following year was supposed to be our first year in Barcelona. So we've done all this preparation to sort of get ready for Barcelona, and then the pandemic came, and we spent 2 years doing nothing in terms of the on-site show, and forgot all the valuable lessons we had learned from all the site visits that we'd done. So obviously we had to do all those again. We tried to do one in 2021 in the February, a full-size one, but that obviously was squashed down, and we did the May show, which whilst was great with the feedback for the weather, obviously being in May, being nice and warm. Unfortunately, we can't move the dates. It is set in stone, I'm afraid. But it was at about 65% capacity of a normal show. So this show in 2023 was really just one of these incredible moments. It was the first proper show in Barcelona. And here are just some stats from the show. And I can tell you, if you haven't heard already, that the Tuesday and the Wednesday of the show, so the first 2 days of the show, were the busiest days we've ever had at an ISE, including Amsterdam and all the years we were there. So it's really fantastic because not only does it shore up our position and help us sort of loosen the purse strings on our budgets now that we've got our revenue stream back on this particular avenue, it's just fantastic to see the industry coming back to in-person trade shows and in-person meetings and stuff. As any futurist, as confident as they can be to say what will happen, we never really know. So we weren't sure what would happen, and we're so pleased that comes back. And to bring it down to a smaller scale, that's what I love so much about this show as well, like having this community here. It gives you the opportunity, and as I mentioned on Kyle's podcast, the AV World UK podcast, coming to these kind of places is fantastic because it means that not only do we get to collaborate with all the higher education institutes, but we get to see the manufacturers and suppliers of certain equipment talking about their products in very specific use case scenarios, which I find fascinating because you have your product specialists there. And I was speaking to someone earlier as well about having the OLED technology explained to them in granular detail, and that was something that was extremely interesting too. So yeah, all round fantastic experience. These are the dates for the 2024 show. You can easily find those online. Make sure you do go to Barcelona and not Amsterdam as much as you'd like to. And so this is another thing, and this is the part of the presentation that I really want to do a bit of a call to action and mention to a lot of you here. So at the ISC show this year, we had our what we called our pilot hiring event. So it's obviously it's no secret to many of you. I think the recruitment struggles touch every part of the industry. And so this was something we'd been thinking about doing for a while, but as I say, we didn't have the ISC show to actually put it on at. So this is something we'd been thinking of for a while. And what we did, as you can see the information there, as the sort of pilot event, we got universities in Spain, close to the Fira in Barcelona, to send out a form to their students, the ones who were studying subjects that would be relevant to the AV industry, or even those who were interested in working in the AV industry, or at least finding out about it. Because again, like a lot of students, they weren't necessarily 100% sure what it was all about. We got over 260 applications, and we used those to collate the information, and then with a selection of sponsors, so your manufacturers, integrators, consultants, things like that, we got those to come in and select some students from that list, and then have an hour where there were basically speed dating, kind of speed pitch interviews between these people and the students. It was fantastic. It was at the AVIXA Exchange Live booth that we had. And at one point, I was very caught up in the whole thing because it was so great to be there and to have all this stuff happening, but also just to have such a buzz on the stand. But I did have to take a moment and step back and think, it is fantastic. You know, all this stuff is buzzing, people are taking photos and filming. But some of these kids, they're like 18 years old and they're basically having their first job interview in front of sort of like 300 people taking photos and, and all that kind of thing. So whilst it was a great test, it's not necessarily something we're going to be doing every year at ISC. However, it was a test to see if it could be justified to do outside of that. And I'm happy to say that with a push from my team to our superiors, we've had the go-ahead to put something like this on in the UK later this year. So when I say a call to action, what I'd really like to do is if any of the institutions here have I'll just click on this next slide as well, because there's a bit more information about the job opportunities that were offered. If you have subject areas in your universities that you think would link to a career in the AV industry, if you have students maybe that you have spoken to, or there's an AV club, or there's any kind of buzz or potential interest for a career in AV, or just some appetite to discover more about what the AV industry is all about, come and grab me. I'll give you a business card. And if you could kindly afterwards just drop me an email and then let me know, so that when we do start to send out these online forms to gather that information, I know who to send it to, and hopefully you can spread it out throughout your university and through the right channels. And then what we're going to do, I'm going to speak to obviously a lot of the exhibitors here and throughout our whole network, and try and get those in as well to act as sponsors for the event. And it's essentially going to be a replica of what we did in Barcelona. So we'll probably extend it a bit more, because that was an hour, and we could probably have more time, give the students a bit more time to have these conversations. There won't be people sort of clamoring and sort of taking photos and sort of like, a lot of buzz. It will be a bit more relaxed. But hopefully it will be valuable, because it's something that, as I say, every part of the industry is touched by the struggle for recruitment, and it's something that AVIXA want to do something about. Obviously, you've got Jack Laidlaw with his apprenticeship scheme, which is going great guns, and we've been involved with that where we can. But we also wanted to try and use our reach and our budgets to put it towards something like this. So yeah, please come and grab me afterwards. I'll give you a card and we can connect about that. Just to also mention as well that there are $2,500 scholarships available through the AVIXA Foundation. Those are open to people from, it's international. There's no, just because it's a dollar amount, that doesn't mean it's restricted to the US. The information's there if you want to take a picture of that slide and just go and visit those. If you go to that link, you can see the 3 different scholarships that are available and what the eligibility criteria are. And then you can also, if you have any questions further to that I can't answer, if you come to me, then you go to email foundation@avixa.org. And these are some of the previous winners, but I believe most of them have been US focused, so we want to try and get a bit more of an international feel going on. So yeah, go and visit that site. The ECS card is still available through Avixa. So if you have a CTS, either CTS, CTS-I or CTS-D, all you need is your health and safety and your electrical safety, and then you can get that through us. It's really easy. My colleagues, Sarah and Gabby, deal with that, and they are just two of our team based in the UK. So you have to go through a call center or an online process. Just email them. They can show you the process, and they're invigilators for the online testing as well. So if you need to update your health and safety or anything like that, they can do that. We have, oh, nice bit of formatting there. Sort of avant-garde, we went for that. So the Avixa Exchange, if you haven't heard of the Exchange or you're not on the Exchange, scan this QR code and it will take you there. It's a fantastic place. It's a good online platform for sharing ideas, for having conversations, for reading posts, posting articles. The LTSMG have a page on there. They announced the information about this event there. And yeah, so if you haven't gone, it's free of charge to sign up. We have just surpassed about 10,000 individual users on that page. So it's starting to gain momentum, and yeah, some great content on there. So scan that QR code and you can yeah, sign up. And then just finally, I imagine most of the people in this room are members of Avixa. So if you have any questions about the benefits of Avixa, come and ask me. But generally speaking, yeah, this is kind of like the basic stuff. And as Greg mentioned, he's very keen on his standards. So if you have any specific questions about that, I'm sure he'd be happy to talk to you there. But yeah, I think that's about it. Those are my contact details. That's the Exchange website. Do you have any questions? We've got 5 minutes if anyone has any questions for me. No? Comprehensive, isn't it? Good. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Ben. Great update there from Avixa to hear what they're doing to support our fantastic industry. So thank you very much. Next, we're over to a friend and colleague of mine who I have the great pleasure of working with to make this event happen. I had to go on the Avixa Exchange myself to find out actually what his real job title is. So it tells me the job title is Solution Architect, AV and Digital Media. There we go. So Adam Harvey from the University of Hertfordshire, he's going to talk to us about some sort of like little LED screens. He's got something like that, but apparently, was it 9.5 meter LED wall? Yes, a surprise. Oh, so, something about screens anyway, and they're big. Adam Harvey.
I thought being on the LTSMG exec would get me out of this presentation stuff, but apparently not. So yeah, we've been on a bit of an LED journey at the moment. So we started off with one project and it's kind of snowballed into a load of others. So I thought I'd just take you on a quick tour of that journey. There's loads and loads of slides, but I'll try and get through them as fast as possible. Mostly pictures, which is good. So our first one, which is maybe the big one that Dave's talking about, the Forum Lecture Theatre. So we had an existing large lecture theatre at College Lane on our campus, which was absolutely horrific. Everybody hated it. No one liked teaching in there. I think about here, some seating started. So the distance between the lecturer and the first row students was just vast. It was just a massive gap, and yeah, the worst room on the entire campus. At the same time, everyone was getting really annoyed about it. Our student union had a big downturn in commercial activities, a lot to do with the pandemic as well. But it triggered an opportunity to develop the nightclub part of the Forum Hertfordshire building that we had. So the nightclub was part of a complex. It's got like Starbucks and Subway, the university restaurant, some bars for the student union, and this big 1,000 capacity nightclub that we used to have some amazing staff parties in, until they said no free bar anymore, and then we all gave up and left. However, so it became an empty space. So some plans were drawn up to design a 250-seater theatre, redevelop the bars for the student union to give them a bit more space. It was awarded £8 million for the construction project, and we were given £500,000 to fit it out with AV and IT. So, as you've seen previously in presentations, starts off like this. Multiple layouts were proposed. We decided on the one which is kind of a half Harvard with turn and learn seating in every other row. We also were involved in the bar designs as well, so we had to redevelop those, try and build in the AV a bit better than it was before. And then it was then a question, what AV do we put in there? So the original design was actually for blended projection. So we worked with, we use Sharp NEC quite a lot at University of Hertfordshire. So we, tap into Graham on their, technical support services, solution design services. This twin projector model with actually one large display rather than two singles was great. It would have worked. However, the building is not, like a lot of new buildings, it's not particularly solid. When you slam doors, walls wobble and things like that. So we had an issue to solve there, like keeping the projectors absolutely stable. We also had a lot of pressure from senior management and the director of estate, stuff like that we want this wow factor, flagship lecture theatre. We want to use it for external events, open days, everything. So yeah, we kind of had a conversation about how we would do it. I don't know where I've gone with this one next. But yeah, okay. So I'll just explain a bit more about that. So trying to stabilize those projectors in the current structure of the building was impossible. So the architect started to look at building steel structures to hold them on so they wouldn't move. And that meant redesigning. So they were pushing this steel structure to hold it into a projection room kind of scenario into one of the bars. So that calculation became you're taking away square meterage of what is actually retail space. So all these complicated maths were done about, how much is that going to cost over the life cycle of the AV? And, all this time, the cost of LEDs coming down. Everybody wants wow. This complicated maths in the middle meant that the jumping point to an LED solution was actually not that big. It was significant, but it wasn't like, eye-wateringly scary. So, we sat in a meeting and talked about it, and then they said, okay, let's go. Let's do the LED solution. So that's it. Great. We get to work. We start designing how it's going to look. We use HughShot as our design partner for this. So if anything looks bad, just Dan and Darren, attack them. But it's not. It's all good. It's all good. Absolutely. So we started the design work, looking what the LED was going to do, all the containment, the speakers, and all the rest of it, as you always do. We start designing the schematics about how the whole thing will work. We start looking at M&E, making sure everything's in the right place, all the speaker containment's in, all the power, the data, everything we need. We kind of look at it a bit holistically as well. So it's not just the AV we do. We just make sure that, do the students have somewhere to plug their laptops in and charge their phones and all the other bits and pieces. So we feed all that into the design. We're also doing the bars as well, which was kind of my favorite bit. We looked at the lighting and how that was going to integrate into the AV and, how that is going to work with the big screen on the wall. So started to plan around that and how that is controlled and designed. And then we finalized the LED design. And then we had a meeting with our creative arts team and they said, wouldn't it be great if it was different? So we had another conversation and ended up with a different design, but actually is for what we've ended up with is actually better solution for multiple users across the university. I think we had, we can do 4K in the middle of the screen, and our film and media, their biggest amount of complaints from students was about where to display 4K content. So they had nowhere to do it. Literally, we had the student survey back like 12 months on from putting this in, and 97% of their complaints had disappeared. So, definitely worth the spend. But anyway, we've done that. We tendered, reviewed it, and appointed GVAV to do the install. They used Piesco as the partner to actually physically install the LED. So we developed the program and then obviously start panicking about the lead times. It's obviously got quite a aggressive development timescale on it. Most of the parts we needed were on huge lead times. So it kind of meant that we had to dynamically redesign the solution as we're going, trying not to affect the functionality, but we had to deliver it. So it's trying to, what product is that, what's a replacement product for that that's not going to change it too much. So we did well, and we also borrowed some stuff from other people when we needed to. Whether they know or not, I don't know. So you see it, we start the project as ever, everybody's in PPE. We start building through, the rooms developed, kind of finished. We've got a nice wall with all the power and data services installed. The wall starts going in, so we had a custom built frame for it that goes in first, and then you start to put the cabinets in. And then, a few days later, this is all done, and the pixel cards start to go on the front, and then we start calibrating it. So the calibration is just try and make sure that actually that LED works in that space. Obviously, you probably saw earlier when this was cranked up a little bit high, that some content on there can be very bright and very sort of like vivid. So you need to just adjust to what you're doing, or just make sure that it actually is nice and comfortable in that space. I think we're running ours about 45% of its brightness now. So yes, we go through this whole calibration, make sure it all looks the same color. So it sits nicely, and end up with this nice, fancy looking LED wall. Hang on, I'll go back. So we've got a solution where we've got a video processor driving it, so we can do multi-windows in there. We can overscan stuff, so you can use end-to-end of the wall. We can put the PowerPoint presentation and lecture capture and the collaboration from students' mobile devices and everything else like that. So we've got it's a really, really good functionality on the display. We also did the bars, like I said, so we started to redevelop those at the same time, tried to integrate all our screens into what was, the bar designs, rather than just sort of nail them to the wall afterwards, put them into picture frames so they look really cool. So there, yes, kind of what we ended up with. You may notice that the cladding on the bottom is not brilliant. We've had that replaced. It was kind of one of those conversations you have with one company and it gets subcontracted, and what you end up with is actually not what you pictured in the first place, and it doesn't fit together very well. But that's all nicely done in wood now. But yeah, so you can see there, we've got one of our multi-display images on it. But yeah, so this is a general purpose meeting lecture theatre space for us. It's our flagship for the College Lane campus. So the trouble with LEDs, once one goes in, everybody wants one. So you remember this one, right? This horrible room that everybody hated, and it was, used to be the student union. So this is, what do we do with Prince Edward Hall now? It's a really big space, and it's just sat empty on campus because basically everybody hates it. So it's an opportunity to redevelop. So our SPECS School of Physics, Engineering, Computer Science, they started a program on CDIO, so create, design, implement, operate, their teaching concept. So they wanted a high resolution, large display in this new space they were doing it. So obviously when we had the meeting, the first thing they said was, maybe we can have one of those screens you put in the forum, which costs quite a lot of money. So, that went through the project stakeholder group, and they said, yes, why not? It looked good. So we did a little bit of research with them. We took them down to Innovation House for Piesco, looked at loads of different LEDs, and they settled on, actually, for our CAD drawings and all the fine detail that we're looking at, an LED is perfect. So we put in number 2. This is Prince Edward Hall now, so it's CDIO space. So again, we put it in, put the frame up, put the LED in, and now this space is kind of, I'll show you, it's kind of used for all sorts of things. So it can be group work, we can wheel 3D printers in there and lathes in there, and it's very much about just use the space as a group working space. You've got a nice big screen there, you've got repeater screens that are all around the room. We can use it for open days, exhibitions, and pretty much any use. It's got a nice cool lighting grid in there, and it's kind of for our, I've noticed this room appears in way more photos for our prospectus and our tweets and stuff from corporate than any other one we've got. So that was number 2. So these are all, when I get to the end of this presentation, we did all this in 12 months. So obviously, once 2 go in, everybody wants one. So our boardroom, so the Vice-Chancellor and the Director of Estates and everybody who's been saying yes to all these others, they've got an existing 3x3 video wall, the 55-inch panels that's been in a while. We've got 2 damaged ones. One graphic card failed, it's on all the time, these things happen. The other one, someone backed a chair into it and smashed the screen. As product changes, the UNV panels that we were using, the new version was similar to the old one, but not quite enough. So you'd notice it was different. So it was, okay, we're going to need to buy another 9. And actually, again, looking at cost differences, beating up the manufacturers a bit, you can get that kind of level pricing. So we did that. Again, that's what they said. Why can we have one of those ones you put in Prince Edward Hall in the Forum? So yeah, you can guess where this is all going, right? So out come the 9 screens, and in goes the LED wall. So that sits at the end of our boardroom table, and a nice big 70-inch screen in the middle, just for, I'm not being ageist in any way at all, but board of governors, some at this end of the room, they're going to need a little bit of help in the middle, despite how big the screen is. So that was our central committee room project 3 within the year. And then we were delivered this temporary teaching accommodation. So the university had a massively good recruitment for computer science. So it meant that we were having to rapidly transform teaching spaces into IT labs. But what that was doing was actually moving the students that were already using those rooms somewhere else, and that somewhere else actually didn't exist. We worked out, we did our timetable auto schedule, and it popped out with 1,000 hours of teaching that we couldn't accommodate in any of our accommodation on campus. So that was it. We run out of teaching space. Can you build some more? We need it in 8 weeks' time. Good, right, okay. So yeah, summer 22 this was. They wanted this, one 200-seater, 170-seater, and 130-seater. Temporary buildings, but they're not to look like temporary buildings. So, we used Marquee as the constructor for the temporary buildings, but we were not allowed to refer to them as tents. We're not allowed to refer to them as marquees. They were called temporary teaching accommodation. And actually, to be fair, they are solid structures. They are pretty good. But student experience is key, right? So you don't want those students to feel like they're getting a second-class education by being in a tent in the garden. So it was very much part of the project and budgeted accordingly that these had to look great, to look really, really good from day one. So there was no issue with student experience, and when they're doing surveys afterwards about teaching accommodation, if they're in the marquee, we're not going to get lower scores for it. Had to have everything in it: hybrid, Panopto, usual standard kit, and everything like that. We already had 5 other massive AV projects on the go already, so we had to find out what was available. The plan was to only have it for 12 months, and in which case we'd build, or re-accommodate or refurb other parts of the university so we could get that teaching into it. So all the stuff was going to go in, was going to come out in 12 months' time, and we could use it in other places. I guess everyone's heard that before, right? This is only there for 12 months. So the last one I did, 25 years later, it's still there. Engineering resource as well. Like I said, we're doing quite a lot of LED installations, and actually to install them, you need people who know how to do it. And they're not just doing projects for the University of Hertfordshire, they're doing projects everywhere. So trying to find the right people to do it in an 8-week timescale is like nuts. And then raise the PO and get on with it. We were very lucky. We found stock of LED that we needed. We decided on LED because these structures, because the project was moving so fast, we didn't know exactly where they were going to go, like the orientation on the campus, where the natural light was coming in, when they were going to be timetabled. Is it going to be, morning, noon, night? There were so many questions. We just needed, we need a big bright screen, and we got LEDs kind of all over the place at the time, well, 3, so we went with it. So the previous ones were all NEC ones, these were LG. So this is a 220-inch bundle that we bought that's going in. So the marquee went up, and we had to build a ply wall for it to be installed on and basically put it in. We also put some repeaters around the room. And this was done in literally 2 weeks from the thing going up to going live. So put it in, carpeted, built the stage, pushed my project manager under the stage, pulling cables. Furniture arrived, and we went live literally straight away. Nail-biting moment, because obviously with a project like that, trades are tripping over each other. The heating duct went in last, so that could only arrive after we'd done all the work. So the guys had to install that right in front of the screen we just put in. So yeah, I just stood there with my head in my hands for the whole day watching that, which was cool. But yeah, so that's what it looked like. So from a temporary teaching building outside on the lawn of the university. Kind of looks okay. The DJ speakers in the ceiling were kind of the only thing we could get hold of at the time very quickly. But looking at the future use of it, they were kind of handy. We needed lots of event audio for other projects, so we thought they'll be fine. 12 months time, we'll take them down and use them for something else. Looks really good, and actually the feedback we've had from it has been okay. I think we've had some issues with rain on the top. You know, we've had some calls saying, can we turn the noise of the rain down? Pretty difficult. I've still not managed that, like 30 years in. So 200 seater was done. Okay. Not moving. Here we go. So the 170 seater. So this was orientated long ways. So we needed 2 for that. So we used the 136 inch bundle from LG from that one. Again, put 2 in, stage built, walls built, services go in, speakers up. You know, this one was really, really late. So in between this, so yeah, sorry, I forgot the massive incident. The Queen died. So Marquee suddenly disappeared because they were having to put temporary staging and stuff up in London for processions and funerals. So yeah, we lost half our workforce like instantly. So this one, I mean, literally we finished this on the Sunday night and we started teaching on a Monday morning, but I'm sure you've done loads of projects like that. But yeah, so we whacked that one in as well. But it looks okay. You know, I was talking to Pete earlier and he was saying about what did you do about the heat off the screens? But actually we were quite lucky in all these that we could position the lecterns away from them. So even with the forum, that's kind of above everybody. So we don't kind of get that problem. And then the 30-seater one, which was a bit more challenging trying to get in, but same thing, we put that one in. Again, it's another 136-inch LED. So that's kind of what the products are. So the big one is kind of like 13.2 million pixels. But I mean, there's one person in the room who can answer all your questions on these LEDs from both brands. Not that she's supposed to. But I think the 136 is on the LG stand, I think, and there's a bit of the. There's some on the Sharp NEC. There's one of the FEs up there as well. So I mean, go to have a look and stuff. We picked them specifically because, you know, they're maintenance from the front. So you just get the unit, whether it's the custom Dyson or the magnetic lifter, and you can take the pixel cards off the front and change all of the components from front access. So once they're up, we don't need to get behind them. You can fit them really slim off the wall. They don't intrude into the room very much. And actually they do the job for us really well. You know, we realized that the ones in the marquee structures, they were always going to be a hard sell to the students, but actually they really appreciate the effort we put into them. You know, they are getting a good teaching experience actually in them. The CDIO space, we're now building another 3 of those in our new specs building. So that Prince Edward Hall, we've got the ground floor of our new specs building's got 3 rooms about the same size in the ground floor. So they're all having an LED in there as well as the reception area. And yeah, I mean, the Forum Theatre, we used to get like thousands of complaints and phone calls about the Prince Edward Hall. I'm sure Richard, my colleague from Hearts up there, will second. But Forum, everyone's kind of blown away by it. We've got the honeymoon period for that one is lasting a long time because everyone's just so, you know, they really like it. It looks really impressive. So I've rattled through that really quickly, deliberately. But yeah, any questions that I'm happy to answer? Unless they're too technical, in which case I'm going to point at other people in the room. Yeah, hold on. Where's the hand? That one there. Nearly.
I read the wow factor 2 times on your slides.
Yeah, they like the wow factor and stakeholders.
Yeah. How was the wow factor kind of, how was your wow solution in audio?
How was the wow solution?
How did you get the wow factor in audio?
In audio. So the Forum, at the moment, it's got the 2 column speakers either side. It's got beam steerable speakers in there. So the sound in there is really amazing. However, we did run out of money to do the surround sound part of it, but we did cable for it. So the ceiling in there, the nightclub was like 3 stories, and they put like a canvas ceiling over it, a stretched canvas ceiling, but left the height. So we had to kind of deal with the acoustics in there, but it actually works really well. but we knew there was going to be no access up there after that went in. So we've cabled for the 7.1 surround already. So it's all coiled up just as you can get it. And I've got the money to do that this summer. So we're nearly ready to go with the package for that. So that should be really good. The film school have been crying out for that one really, because they wanted the whole thing. But in the meantime, we built them a little preview studio with Atmos in it. And so they're kind of happy for now. But
beam steering columns with extra woofers, with extra bass cabinets?
No, they're just the JBL CBT 1000s. I can't remember the product number of them.
I want to ask a question. Can you tell something about the brightness of the LED screen in comparison to the surroundings and the courses that you give with it? Because if you have 2000 nits or something with white screens, then it hurts your eyes.
Yes.
What did you do with such things?
No, so, well, I mean, personally, we left that to the guys who installed it. So we did a lot of calibration with it just to make sure that product sat comfortably in that room and that environment. So we did a load of tests on it. We brought in a load of different content. We brought in a load of different users, and we just made sure that they were comfortable with everything they had at the time as content they were going to deliver for the first semester. That it wasn't overpowering, it wasn't too bright, the colours weren't too vivid, but it was just sat nicely in there. So there was going to be no eye strain on people. Especially the big one at the top. We're very, very conscious. So it is dialed down quite heavily, but it does sit nicely. I think I was talking to you earlier. We've got adjustable lighting in there. It's dimmable. We can take different tracks out. So it works really well in all those scenarios. So yes, I'm relying on the fact that PSCO did all of the calculations. They told me they did, so it was all right.
Thank you.
I had 12 other projects to do.
Why did you go with LG after obviously using NEC for the first project?
The honest answer is so, well, we phoned up and said we need 4 LED screens to be delivered to us in 4 days, and they were in the warehouse. So that is the reason. I mean, we did have a look. I had seen the products before. I'd been to the LG showroom. We'd had a look at it, and we sort of went out with a shopping list that had multiple brands on it, just to see what was available. What we were going to be comfortable with putting in, just the stock levels at the time. And it kind of was lucky, really, that in the warehouse there was exactly what we needed, exactly the right time. And I think that was kind of unusual. That wasn't going to happen every day. We just absolutely struck lucky. And I think that was the point. If we hadn't, that day we made that phone call, we were absolutely lucky. If we'd have done it 2 days later, we wouldn't have delivered the project. So it was just stroke of luck. That was nice. But yeah, there's one on the back. Go on, good throw, Jackson. Okay.
Just out of interest, your film school, how much content, whether how much content of 4K do they actually use on the screen?
So they use quite a lot, especially we've got an animation course as well that do 4K content. So they're looking for pixel by pixel comparison. So they have a load of content and they had nowhere to display it or showcase it. The film school, they're ramping up. So they were trying to do content for what they had available to display on at the time. Now, the lead of the film school, like Howard Berry, who we work with really closely, now he's got that to play with. They've kind of gone mad. So they've got a lot of content. I haven't been to see them for ages, but I hear they're using it, to its full capacity.
Sorry, how do they manage the workflow to the screen? Is it on a server?
They can plug things in, yeah. They mostly bring it on their Macs. But yeah, we've got video processors and everything. We've got the whole infrastructure for them to use. It's just whatever's easily available to them. It's a general resource. So we built them a preview room, and we're doing another one soon. So it's a specific room in their school for them. So they've now got a bit more technical with that. They are wheeling bits of servers and stuff in to plug into that one. But this, this can be used by them 9 till 10 in the morning, and then another class after that. So it has to be, the what do you call it, the lowest common denominator, really. It's got to be standard like all our other rooms. It's got to be usable, so we can't make it too complicated, but it does enough for them at the moment. And it is completely expandable as well. It's on an MVX background, so infrastructure, so we can route anything to anywhere. Cool.
Thank you very much.
Cheers, mate.
Thank you, Adam. Seems really fitting that we should have a presentation on LED screens on our LED wall. There we go. So next up is Marcus Saunders, if I've got the job title correct on this one, Associate Director, Technical Services. I couldn't remember the rest of it. Anyway, Marcus is from University of the Arts London and is going to talk about a rather interesting, exciting new project.
Thank you very much.
All yours, Marcus.
I need the...
Got some juice? Got some HDMI?
I think so. Hello, good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to try and just run through as many pictures as possible with very little text to try and show you what we've been up to. I've obviously presented a couple of times here on this project, but we're getting really close to the finish line now, so I thought it'd be good to show you where we are. So just a brief intro. UAL is these 6 colleges and these 4 institutes. We are about 21,000 students, and then the college I work at specifically, and this project relates to, is about just under 6,000 students. That's how that breaks down. We're ranked number 2 in the world for art and design. The Royal College of Art, also in London, is ranked number 1, and that's postgrad only, so technically we're the number 1 undergrad art and design university. So the project is to take, and you probably won't be able to see those, but the project is to take these 6 sites, which are spread across London for the London College of Fashion, and shove them all into one building on the Olympic Park. So it's a project run by the London Legacy Development Corporation, who are the power behind the 2012 Olympics and the regeneration project for Stratford, with Mace as the primary contractor and Eliza Morrison as the architectural firm. So, and just sorry, I'll go back there. Oh, I can't go back. Yes, I can. And UCL are in the house as well, and they're just opposite us across that navigation, that canal there. So that building there is the Marshgate campus that's just recently opened, I believe. So this is not a render, this is the real thing a couple of weeks ago. And our building is that one in the middle. We've got great neighbours, the V&A, the BBC, Sadler's Wells. This is, oh, wow, didn't like that. My video's not playing. Okay, so this was supposed to be a bit of drone footage, so pretend it's moving, because it's a really nice little aerial display. I'll just try and run that again, because it's worth seeing. No, unhappy. Never mind, moving on. It's 36,000 square meters, 14 stories. It's a very big building, and it's BREEAM Outstanding, which is the highest classification you can get for a building of size. It's also the tallest building at 86 point something meters, apparently, in the UK for an education building. And now none of my slides are working. There you go. Okay, so one of this kind of primary kind of considerations was how do we equip that building over the time that we had to do it. We're reusing about a third of the site has equipment from our existing 6 sites. So we invested about 3 years ago in equipment for the new building, and that's part of our sustainability drive as well, to make sure that the life cycle of all of the equipment is used. We don't just put all new equipment in the building. We're doing the same for furniture as well. So that's one of the strategies. It's a very industrial building, so it's got windows that open, which is something that all of the staff requested. That was feedback. Every window opens in the building. It's got those lovely sawtooth roof for kind of visual design spaces. You can see all those industrial chimneys on the top, which look a bit like that. Those are the north-facing design studios for some of the courses there. There's a public area in front of the building that has an arts program. So all of these arts institutes, it's called East Bank, and these arts institutes have an annual program that will ignite that space in front of the campus buildings. There's the first event. It was a dance event, I believe. You can see some people on the balconies, other bits and pieces. It opens in September to students. It opens to staff in August, and we get the keys on the 8th of June. So it's really close. We've actually got some quite nice little features. So this is the building above what was British Home Stores before it disappeared. And these are the Art Deco stained glass windows that cast light onto the stairwells inside the building. So we recreated that with the screening around the top of the building. So you get a very similar effect inside. So people still feel that some of that legacy, some of those buildings still carries across to the new space. It has these amazing sort of internal cast in situ concrete staircases. This is called the Orange Peel staircase. The project overall is about 1.1 billion, which is all of those buildings along the East Bank. Ours is about a quarter of that in terms of the overall project fund. That's got mayoral money and government money in it as well. So the building, we constructed the building so that there's a concept of this heart space in the middle, which is an open space, and it goes through all of the floors. And then the enclosed spaces are on the outside. So I'll just show you a couple of kind of quick pictures of what's going on inside the building now as it's being fitted out. So there's an unfinished floor and there's a finished floor. So that's part of the heart space. You can see that the enclosed spaces are off to the side, and then you get these crazy staircases, and lots of different types of staircases going through it. So it's quite striking. Then these are teaching spaces in the heart space, and they'll be equipped, there'll be machinery in there. And we've taken a lot of care to make sure the acoustics across floors, all the cutouts are in different spaces, so that the joinery does a lot of work actually to help split up those open spaces and be sort of practical for teaching purposes. A couple of other views, and the joinery is also is working for the AV system as well. So you can just start to see there's a writing board down there on the wall. It's got acoustic dampening and diffusers, and some of the forms of it. I think the one before had the diffusers in it. So that's an AV wall in an open space. It's got exactly the same configuration as an enclosed space. More pictures of stairs, because there are lots of those. The upper floors have this enclosed atrium, so that the hubbub or the STI indexes across those spaces still work well. Again, more stairs. So lots of different types of stairs, and they're proud of the stairs. I think I've said that now. That's the Orange Peel staircase that I was sort of talking about before. Now, that's also a performance space. So there are fixtures, there's power and data at the top and bottom of those columns, so we can clamp things around it, we can project off them, we can put PA systems in there and rigging in there as well. So these zones around the edge, A, B, C, D, the workshops are in B and C, because we've got about 400 processes, industrial processes going on in that building. There's a School of Design Technology, a media school, and a business school. And there are lab spaces, cosmetic science labs, additive subtractive manufacture, milling, all sorts of things going on. So it's quite complicated. The whole principle for this heart space, an external ring around the edge, was so that we could have a column-free teaching space on every single floor. So the columns that support the building are at the edges and border that heart space. That's what that's a room that's been fitted out looks like. I'm just going to flick quickly through some of those. That's a lasting room, so that's where some footwear department will be in there. You can see compressed air and things like that going in. There's solar shading on the panels on the side of the building that needs it, so you can, about 60%, you can close those off. Where the benches are, you just close those fins, which is helpful. I can't remember what that room is. That's a workshop. The MEP side was a nightmare. So I had the responsibility for the whole MEP scheme across the building. So that's one of those workshops. And those are the markup notes on how you get the right power to the right machinery. I'm sure you've all, we walked around a nice set of workshops yesterday that had probably similar challenges. But what that meant is we could sneak the AV design into the stage 5 drawing pack. So we did about 300 AV drawings that were part of that stage 5 piece of work by the contractor instead of an AV integrator. So that meant that the precision was really good. You get all of the stud partitions. You can place things really, really accurately if you're working directly with the contractor. So onto the AV design. We have an in-house integration team. Obviously, 200 spaces in 3 months is a little bit much for that team. Weren't going to be able to do that. So we tendered to deliver the design, and we've appointed Kinley to do that work. And this is the kind of overarching principle for the space. And that's the kind of strap line for what we're trying to do. But this is the kind of real thing. It's everything has to work for everyone within 30 seconds or you're toast. And everyone will understand that from a kind of student experience perspective as well. And I think starting there is quite useful. These are I'm not going to go through any of that, but that's the stuff that you've probably heard me talk about before. No lecterns. Some of the principles there are around you bringing your experience to the space with your device and then empowering that experience. So Cisco, so the building has about 10,000 ports. It's flood-wired and patched, and every port is 10 gig. And trying to get those things, it was 15 months in total. So those orders were placed in, we first reserved stock in 2021. The order was the 20th of January 22, and we got them last month. So there you go. Supply chain. So the journey over the last few years with this is quite an interesting one. Our partners, Top Tech, we've worked with to develop this. This is called the Active Learning Bar. You might have seen it in other forms, but this is the final version that's going into the East Bank building. It has a carrier chassis. The cutout at the back aligns with those drawings that you just saw, so that goes over the data ports so that no one sees the data ports, but also the data ports are secure. Everything's PoE, and you have inputs on the side so that you can bypass. And if you need to do critical viewing, 4K 444, you can do that. You can just go straight into the side. This is the technology platform that sits inside it. So we're deploying Solstice. We've been doing that for a while. They go inside the boxes. Huddly, we have some Bose VBS as well in some spaces. QSys is a whole building QSys system that's going in. Yeah, that's what's going inside the boxes. So at kind of T-2 years, we started putting these in. So we've done about 70 rooms across the existing estate so that we have soft landing. So everyone's used it already. Everyone knows how it works and what they need to have on their device, and we can do all of that pre-flight stuff. So although we'll be scaling to 100% of our rooms with this model, there's a good chunk of people that have already used it. This is just no videos are playing. That's really strange. So that was a video that showed taking the carrier tray out and putting it back in because it's toolless. The idea being that you can swap the entire room in. We wanted to aim for 2 to 3 minutes. And the commissioning, we also wanted to get to under 10 minutes for each room, just so that we could be quite rapid. So we have a partnership with Sharp NEC and Bird Dog. We built this product with these wonderful people here. So you recognize Graham, but that's Dan Mile and Eamon Drew on the other end. And these guys, we sort of set off about 2 or 3 years ago to build a product for this building. This is the product. It sits inside the screens, and it's an NDI encoder, decoder, and then what probably, I don't know whether I'm allowed to do that, but it's also a Dante 2x2 encoder, decoder as well. So you can essentially use this for lecture capture, straight off to Panopto from it, at source from the display. You can also use it as your AV over IP cross-point matrix from room to room or for sources within the room. And why that's useful to us and why we do it a lot is because we have quite small process, maybe jewelry or machinery that you're working with. And there's a lot of live relay. So doing that over NDI is great. We can put in PTZ cameras, and then the display itself can just decode the NDI signal, but you can also tap that off for lecture capture. So that's kind of the whole AV over IP infrastructure for the building. Is that 10 gig switch stack, then everything NDI or Dante with QSys managing the audio across that. These little things, I don't know if they've got any of them here, but the Play and the pods, Those, like that pod thing on the other end, that takes up to 4 NDI streams, decodes 4 NDI streams. You tap the button and it switches sources, and it gives you a USB to plug into your laptop to go to a Teams call or to Panopto personal recorder, and it costs 150 quid. So if you invest in the network infrastructure, you can suddenly start doing lots of things for lots of different use cases. So our idea is really that the building's got this flexibility, and we'll just issue little kits to people and they can spark things up as they want. That's a room that's showing kind of how that same layout that you saw in our existing building will work. Just step through that quickly, get onto some other bits. So you can see the back boxes sit behind the unit. And then that's the development. So I showed the first one of these at LTSMG. That was version 1, which was quite a lot bigger. Adam did a couple of those. Thank you, Adam. And then Joe Way did 500 of them, but with his own version of it. Anyway, so yeah, we then did this soundbar form version. That's about 800 mil long. We only deployed about 2 of those. And then the version that you saw in the earlier slides is about this big. It's about 420 mil. And that's it. That's the entire room AV system. So on to DV LED. That's the lecture theatre before anything happened. I'm quite proud of the lecture theatre. It was going to be a rectangular box, which is what architects usually start with. And then we did lots of nice sketching and talked to them about some of the acoustic properties that we wanted to introduce and some of the other aspects. So being able to influence that was really nice. That's it going in before the seats. There are the seats. And then that video is not playing either. None of my videos are playing. Okay, that's going to be interesting a bit later. So this is the lecture theatre is 342 seats. That portal that you see there is for an 11-meter DV LED. It's 1.2 dot pitch. There was a bit over the top that said all of this. I'm going to try and remember it. And it's I'm going to talk a little bit about what it is in terms of its resolution and its capabilities. So I don't know if you noticed, but all my slides have been dark. This is the URL. The URL template is white. So I'm starting to kind of teach our IER team and all of our all the branding exercises that go around it that we need to start thinking about being ready for using DV LED screens at that scale in a lecture space like that. So at the my first slide on the deck said that it was a DV LED friendly deck. So we're starting to get that practice into place so the academic staff can, not blind people basically. The display can handle obviously 4K UHD in the middle, or DCI, or 21:9, and then you can step up to 2 times 4K, 2 times DCI, and if you're really brave, you can handle 8K at a 4:1 ratio. Okay, so we will be able to drive the canvas at that pixel pitch. So that's going to be interesting. We'll see how that works out. Then lastly, I just wanted to talk about this research volume that we've been developing. So we were very lucky. This is just, again, another video that's not going to play. What is going on? This is about 9-meter square box. We're going to put a DV LED volume in there for virtual production. The primary display, we're sort of shrinking the soundstage down. So a soundstage, if you go to a soundstage, it would normally be about a 2.5 or 2.8 pixel pitch on the main display and about 3.8 or above on the lid and the reflectors at the side. So we're basically taking that and shrinking it down to go into this 9x9 box, 6.2 meters high. And that's so we can get closer to it, but also for research and for the type of practice that we're looking to undertake in that space. So yeah, it's a partnership with the UK Research and Innovation Council. This XR network is a bunch of other universities. So Belfast are doing an amazing project. That's like a £70 million new district just in the city for multiple sound stages, multiple volumes. It's a really interesting project. But there's Edinburgh, York, ourselves, one other. And we're part of this network. So our consultants, we brought in Lux Machina, who are, if you've ever watched The Making of the Mandalorian or any of those things, those are that's the company that has spent a decade working in these volumes. in Hollywood and all over the world. And Ari, who you'll all know from the sort of lighting and camera world. Piasco helped us to pull together a number of manufacturers. These are the manufacturers that we undertook some testing with. So we did camera testing with a Mini LF and with a Venice 2. These are probably the most used and sort of highest specification cameras you could point at a DV LED. That one's an 8K version of the Venice 2, and that one's a 4K version of the Mini LF. So Lux came in with us on all of these tests to run the brain bar, as they call it, and all of the media servers, so the Unreal Engine stuff, but mostly to undertake the color science, because we didn't feel we were qualified to undertake that kind of testing. So we wanted to evaluate all of the panels. We did that at Pinewood and at Piasco, Innovation House. There's just some shots of us messing around with DV LED and cameras, really. There you go, some of my team. That's a spectrometer, so we were measuring linearity, we were measuring all of the specifics of the panel. That's David from Lux. So what was very interesting is that some of this product, I don't know if, Sammy, do you recognize that one? Yeah. So that's Magnet that you might have seen at ISE, and some of it was sort of very hot off the press, and we sort of did some work with various manufacturers to kind of test and retest, having made some tweaks to some firmware and some other bits and pieces. So it was quite an interesting process. We then started building some LED because I think Liam felt that I needed to spend some time doing some ground stack LED work in case I need another gig at some point. So yeah, that was good. And then this was supposed to be a little show reel of some different volumes that we've been visiting, but it's clearly not going to play. So I might try and play it from here instead, because it doesn't seem to be playing through your... Huh? Yeah. Nope, none of this video is playing. Okay, apologies. Just in case it's PowerPoint having a moment. These are my last two slides anyway. Absolutely not. Okay, well, if you want to watch some video of some DVD volumes, oh, there you go. Oh, dear. I'll scroll it. There you go. They're quite impressive spaces when you get to kind of hang out in them, you know, and talk to people about what they're using them for. This is Mars. So that was Ari stage. This is Mars. We looked at some camera tracking systems as well. They're quite interesting. Lots of different choices there. This was a SMPTE event that was kind of showing a sort of live session. So with Lambda students running a scene on a VP stage. And then this one is also interesting, but won't play. So I'll try and scroll it again. But this was the launch of a studio space in North Paris. And that's the largest CLED from Sony that's gone into a virtual production space so far. There you go. Thank you very much. Cheers. Oh, thank you very much. Cheers.
Thank you, Marcus. Very, very insightful, very exciting projects there. Thank you. So it feels like we've kind of done recent, current, and maybe we're now going to move to the future. Our next presentation is about virtual reality and augmented reality. I'd like to welcome Chris McAvoy, who's the Head of Enterprise Services at Keele University, and also a colleague of mine, Allegra Hedida, Associate Professor in Strategy from Cambridge Judge Business School, University of Cambridge. Both have got a very interesting set of insights into the use of VR and AR in higher education. So, please.
Okay, afternoon, everyone. Obviously, I'm last on, so I appreciate we're just between you and some drinks here, so I'll try and rattle through this quite quickly. So, yeah, thanks to Dave for the invite to come and talk to you today about VR, AR, and the future XR at Keele University. Like all of us, we're really keen on introducing and implementing technology to support teaching and research at Keele. Some of you who've been in the industry long enough may remember a tour of one of our pharmacy cave rooms. That was about 10 years ago, and things have moved on since then. The primary focus of some of those technologies have been in our sort of sciences and health faculties. In a short while, Allegra will talk about, you know, the application in other areas as well. So, yeah, stick around for the end of that bit. So, kind of starting off with AR. This is a project that started around about sort of 6 to 7 years ago in our geography, geology, and environment school, where they effectively bid for some funding for an off-the-shelf AR solution to effectively show terrain and you know, the effects of erosion and that sort of thing on the landscape. Unfortunately, that bid for funding was rejected at the time. So our ever resourceful geography technicians effectively went out to the internet, found some instructions, and built their own sandbox. Effectively, that's what it is. So it's, as you can see from the pictures, it's a box full of sand, and they rigged a downward firing projector and a Microsoft Kinect unit to the top of the box to effectively detect the depth and gesture controls that would be used, rig that up to a PC, and effectively what this sandbox allows them to do is, in real time, they can manipulate the sand in the box, create new peaks and valleys and so on, and even, you know, put little models. There's a little model in the one on the right there of a dam, and see the effects of, you know, flooding a valley. And with gesture controls, they can introduce rain and again see how the water flows through both the peaks and the valleys of that solution. It's been really good. It's been really well received. It's used for open reach, so outreach events and sort of early first year sort of teaching. It's still getting strong. We've done a number of upgrades on it, and it's still used, so it's really good to see. On the VR side of things, some of our recent examples of this have been in our health faculty. Our nursing midwifery school, during the pandemic, obviously things like student placements were severely restricted. So what we did alongside our nursing midwifery school was reach out to a company called Oxford Medical Simulation, and they produced a virtual placement system, which we bought during the pandemic, which allowed through use of VR and not VR as well, so that they can use this in a standard classroom. It provides a number of different scenarios, nursing scenarios for the students to go through. You know, as you can see from the pictures, administering oxygen, taking vital signs and OBS, etc. And it's all kind of encompassed in this idea of simulated patient learning, which is a theme very key to our health faculty. It's as I say, it's run for a couple of years now. We've got some feedback from the students. They really like the idea of the flexibility of it. It can be used in the VR space as well as, you know, in a normal classroom, so they're not restricting to use in a single location. But students aren't dumb. You know, they know this isn't real. The feedback they gave us is there's limited interaction that they can have with those virtual patients. You know, they can manipulate the patients and move them around, but they can't ask the questions. They can't get that sort of real feedback from that system. So what we're doing again with the same school is looking at another solution from a different company, which uses AI to provide some of that real-time interaction. Because of the limitations with the interaction of this system, it's now we're back to normal and restrictions are lifted. It's now used primarily to support those physical placements going back in. But one thing we are looking at with our radiography school, again, this idea of patient simulation, is a system from a company called in New Zealand called Virtual Medical Coaching. And this is a much more interactive, more detailed solution. What our radiography school came to us with was the fact that it's a really successful course, but we're limited in terms of, again, the number of actual placements the students can attend, and it's really restricting the growth of that school in terms of student numbers. So we approached this company, we've done a few demos, and through, again, carefully guided scenarios and following NHS guidelines, they can effectively reproduce a placement of a variety of different radiography scenarios, from simple X-rays through to CT, MRI, etc. And it's really quite interesting in that the students can interact, change various settings of the equipment in the VR space. They can manipulate the patient, so move them into the correct location under the imaging equipment. And depending on how they've done that, in terms of how they've managed to achieve that, the output of the image, which is effectively spat out outside of the virtual environment, they can go away with this image and analyze it. It will directly reflect those settings they've used and the way they've manipulated that patient, whether they're in the right place or not. So if they've not got things quite right, the image won't be quite right. And that's really good for their learning. And again, this system will also, after the session, will give them sort of targeted questions around how they've performed. So if they've not got the settings quite right, the system will ask them about that specific aspect of the session. And then finally, something we're looking at is to bring some of those technologies together in a single space. So the idea of sort of extended reality and bringing both physical, virtual, mixed reality technologies all into a single space. So we're currently building, or have built, a digital research building, not a teaching building, interestingly. Working with Hugh Shot on the design of some of those spaces, but one of the spaces is a three-sided LED sort of immersive data visualization sort of space. And we're also putting in a projection cave room just on the side of the corridor. And the idea of those spaces is for some of our big research projects. So we've got research projects on astrophysics, computer science, those sorts of things, and they really generate a hell of a lot of data. So to support that, we've got a new HPC cluster going into the same building. But what the idea is, what we want them to do is effectively use a space like this to display those research results rather than just a load of numbers on a screen. Think about creating content around being able to display those results in a more immersive, engaging way using a space like this. And again, in terms of the cave scenario, our computer science school will be creating content specifically designed for the cave and hopefully to be used in this space as well. In terms of the building and the idea of the building being primarily research and not teaching, we're hoping that once people, as somebody said earlier, once people see this, some of the ideas and the creative processes will start to kick in, and people will then come forward with their own use cases and ideas on how they can use this solution. So that's a very quick whistle-stop tour of some of the use cases we're using AR and VR for at Keele, and over to Allegra on how she's using it at Cambridge Business School.
Thanks, Chris. Someone forgot their card on the, is that, no? Okay, so first of all, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot to the organizers for inviting me. Thanks a lot for an amazing conference so far. I'm learning so much being amongst you, and thank you so much as well for being such welcoming and open to a lowly faculty member like me in your very learned group. So as Dave said, I'm an associate professor in strategy. I teach strategy, I teach creativity, and I teach creative arts and media management at the Cambridge Judge Business School. So I just wanted to kind of step back a little bit and reflect on the complete surreal situation of someone like me telling you things about VR. I feel my imposter syndrome is flaring up dramatically at the moment. But no, what I'm really interested in is really pushing the boundaries of making learning experiences as exciting and as effective as possible with our students, from undergraduates to executive education, CEOs, and top managers. My journey into VR started in September 2022. I started getting really interested in this and really getting into this, and culminated recently, about 3 months ago, with the first ever VR pilot at Cambridge Judge Business School, both in executive education and on the MBA program. And now we're hoping to roll out VR across our program. Now, Dave asked me to really talk to you about the applications of virtual reality in a business school context. And I'd like to do that. And I'm just going to share with you what I've learned on this relatively short journey since September 2022. And I'd like to articulate that around 3 core ideas. The first one is collaboration, second, pedagogy, and third, research. So first of all, in terms of collaboration, I would say that it really takes 3 to tango. In the sense that in order for a VR experience in the classroom to be effective, you need the collaboration of participants. This is the easiest one to get in some ways, because particularly in younger participants, they've all used VR already. They're quite open to the technology. Faculty sometimes can be a little bit more difficult to convince. However, if you have a couple of faculty champions in your faculties, in your schools, this helps considerably. And most importantly, you. And I'm extremely grateful that in the business school at Cambridge, we've got an amazing AV and IT team. And they're really, I mean, it's true. It is true. They're really leaning in all the crazy things we're offering to them. Second point, pedagogy. Now, the traditional business school approach to learning goes with case studies, and mostly written case studies that we ask participants to read before stepping into the teaching environment. So it is time consuming for them. They have to come prepared to the lecture. And we ask them in the case study, it finishes with a question. There's always a CEO looking out the window and pondering the future of the organization. And we ask them to put themselves in the shoes of this decision maker. And we have in-class discussions. When you have a VR case or a VR experience, the participants do not need to put themselves in the shoes of anyone. They are literally in the experience, and they're fully immersed in a different setting. So they become a key protagonist of the narrative. They can no longer be passive bystanders in the story, and they're offered different options. Dave described the type of VR experiences we're using in the business school as some kind of a choose your own adventure type of setting, in the sense that the participants we get through the VR experience are given options, and they have to make choices at several points in the experience. And then they come back to the reality of the classroom setting, and we debrief those choices together. We ask them to sometimes, because they've made different choices, they have an asymmetry of information, so we ask them to discuss and contribute their collective learning. The VR offering that we are using at the business school in Cambridge, mostly at the moment, comes from INSEAD. in Fontainebleau. INSEAD is really, in terms of business school, at the trailblazing forefront of VR teaching and developing VR experiences, and we're really grateful and really privileged to be working with them on this initiative. Now, some examples of the experiences you can have in using VR in a business school. So for instance, if you're teaching operations management, you can have a virtual factory tour. Instead of taking the students on a bus for several hours to an actual factory and disrupting a little bit the life of the workers in the factory, you can have a virtual factory tour. In strategy, which is what I teach, you can ask participants to make decisions in real time in a boardroom, or you can take them on a beach in Zanzibar and make decisions about products and price product combinations and customer choices. In leadership, you can ask participants to decide on resource allocations in extreme situations. You can ask them to, for instance, prioritize on the type of resources they need on a mission to Mars. Or you could potentially, and this is something I'd like to develop in the future, you could ask them to explore issues of teamwork on a rowing boat in the middle of the Cambridge-Oxford race on the Thames River. There's a quite considerable upfront investment in virtual reality. However, I think those examples actually show that from our perspective, particularly in terms of cost in the long term and the mitigation of the carbon footprint, plus the opportunity that we give participants to go to places they may not ever have an opportunity to go to, for instance, Mars. I think these benefits outweigh considerably the cost. And from my perspective, maybe one of the most important learnings I've had along the way, and one of the most important applications I see in VR in our teaching and moving forward, is in terms of research. Because the virtual reality is in effect a real-life, real-time behavioral lab. What you can do is you can track heat maps, you can track the movements of the heads of the participants, you can track their body language in real time. So the participants' body language and their gaze and the number of minutes or seconds they spend looking at something or changing their gaze, looking somewhere else in the VR experience, they can't cheat with that. They can't really lie with that. And we can actually use this, and some of my colleagues, again, in other places are doing this already, use this in research papers, because de facto what we're creating with VR is a benign, risk-free intervention to alert participants to some of their behaviors or some of their biases when tasked with a particular decision or faced with a particular situation. So to conclude, I think VR is it's part of the future of how we teach in business schools. It's not a gimmick. There's a real added value in teaching and research associated with VR. And I think we have a huge opportunity cost if we do not embrace it and use it to the best of our abilities. Thank you very much.
Thank you both very much. Fantastic there. And Allegra, I'm sure I heard a little snippet of a new project you've got for me there, so thank you for the pre-warning. I'll get my 360 camera ready to take out to the River Thames. So we've come to the end of the presentations part of the day. I'm feeling thirsty. Hang on a minute. Oh, that's all right. I've brought my beer stein with me. It just so happens that there's a few more of these on a table outside. It hasn't got your name on it, but it has got LTSMG on it. So Make sure you pick up your own LTSMG beer stein from the registration table just by the front doors. So tonight we're going, one each, please. There are, Matt just reminded me, there are only one each, so please. We're going to be grabbing a coach to Nottingham this evening to go to the beer cellar. And people said, what are we actually doing there? Well, we're going to have our very own Oktoberfest experience. It's going to be incredible. So I hope you've already been and picked up your various Oktoberfest related accoutrements from the Charles Penny C stand. If you haven't, they've run out. Coaches are at what time, Adam? I've forgotten. We've all forgotten. 7 o'clock. So 7 o'clock sharp from the Burley Court Hotel. There we go. Matt should be doing this. Meet in the lobby at 10 to 7 to make sure we're not late out. You don't need to bring your glasses with you tonight, and in fact, I would recommend that you don't. So don't get smashed, lost. They're not going to wash them for you, so just take that back home with you as a souvenir with our compliments. So thanks for a great day. Let's go out and enjoy a few beers tonight. And actually, don't rush away, because it's all about drink, isn't it? We've got a drinks reception now around the exhibition. So have a drink with us. Then no need to rush.